So happy to be here today and also really excited about this panel. And the focus of the panel, we're going to hear from three researchers, and the theme is all about researching teaching accessibility. So I'm so excited about this. We've got three panelists. How we're going to do this is each panelist is going to give a 10-minute presentation about their work so that we can get some insights there. I'll introduce each panelist in turn, and then afterwards we've got time for Q&A. So if you could please use that Q&A button once again, and then I'll keep an eye on that and field that to the panelists. So I'm not going to go on too much about myself. Just as Sarah mentioned, I'm from JISC, and actually, wonderfully, after this, you'll hear from my colleague Laura Hutton from JISC, which is the UK digital agency for further and higher education, all about some resources and things that we provide. So you'll hear more about us then if you're intrigued. So our first panelist, who's going to give a little overview of his work, is Dr. Swaroop Joshi, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and Information Systems at BITS Pilani in the Goa campus in India. So possibly our furthest flung panelist today. I don't know, we might have someone further away. And I hope it's not a horrible time of day for Swaroop. So Swaroop, I would love for you to take over and to share something about your work. And then after we'll hear from Andy, who you've already seen today, and then Weiqin from Oslo. But Swaroop, do we have you? If you would like a moment to get organised, we can go to Andy, if Andy's okay with that. Would you be okay to go just now while Swaroop gets organised?
Yeah, I think I can. I'll step in, no problem.
We hope so.
Well, I will try and share my PowerPoint then. Hopefully this will work.
Yeah, we can see that. Great stuff.
Yeah, so thanks, Kelly. Thanks a lot. I will just say Kelly is a really good friend of our project, so it's great to have her with us today. So yeah, hello again, everyone. So this is a bit of a follow-up from Sarah's keynote and her overview of the project. But I want to really sort of outline our approaches to the research in the current phase of the study, but also looking forward to the next phase. I am going to start with our literature review, not only because, like many major projects, early work includes reviewing the literature, but also I hope it provides an insight into the nature of inquiry in the field, which hopefully sort of helps contextualize our research approaches. We conducted a systematic review initially over a 20-year span, which we're updating year on year through the course of the project. And our protocol paper is there. I'm sure somebody will share that in the chat. And we will be looking to publish the findings from our literature review in the near future. But I wanted to quickly highlight what we see as dominant approaches to reporting the teaching of accessibility. We do see a lot of experiential sort of accounts of teaching, which tend to be descriptive and reflective, but may lack sort of research quality. Research in the field often comprises sort of small-scale teaching interventions, some of which are related to sort of tool development and testing. And often they typically involve sort of pre and post testing of students, sort of surveys and things like that. And we do also see a lot of papers outlining curricular and course designs, sort of sharing of those. So going back to what Sarah was saying earlier around sort of recognizing that pedagogic culture is generally underexplored in this field and perhaps underdeveloped in this field, we've tended to draw on what we term research methods that teach. And there's a really great paper there from from Sarah and Melanie Nind. And these really foster inclusive approaches to engaging in dialogue with teachers and also with learners. And central to this was our adoption of expert panel method. So this method was used by Sarah with Professor Melanie Nind on a previous research study into research methods pedagogy. In this project, our expert panelists comprised leading accessibility educators in the field, in both academic and workplace settings. And the idea of this, so firstly, we conducted individual interviews with all of our experts, and then we invited those same people to comment on online forums to discuss key themes and topics, which we generated from our analysis of the interviews. And those consisted of sort of summaries of findings and key quotations. So this is a method that both validates the data, but also sort of extends it, sort of develops it further. So there's that sense of really developing negotiated knowledge through a shared dialogue in a collaborative space. And we did follow this up with two really significant sets of focus groups with further educators who were actively engaged in the teaching of training of accessibility, again in higher education and workplace settings, but where we also drew further on those themes and topics which we developed through the expert panels. So our case studies, these represented different sites of learning within academic and workplace sectors. And I think these sort of spanned across 4 different countries as well. And these were both formal and informal learning environments, in person and online. And as you can see there, these included university courses and industry training, some of those sort of formal aspects, but also sort of hackathon type events and champions networks. And we employed what is, I guess, sort of generally classic sort of case study data methods. So observations, interviews and focus groups, but also analysis of sort of documents and materials. And this did include our first opportunities to engage with learners and others that are involved in the learning environment, such as expert users. A quick word about our analysis. I mean, both Sarah and I do draw on broadly social, cultural perspectives of teaching and learning. And doing so helps us identify not just how accessibility is taught, but how sort of those institutional and disciplinary cultures in higher education as a place of learning, but also as a workplace, influence how accessibility is taught. So it's thinking about how accessibility expertise, where it's located and how that's shared. And this can include links between teaching and research activities, but it can also include engagement in EDI work and policy, procurement, and lots of other activities. And we also see how those different sub-disciplines in computer sciences influence how accessibility is valued and appropriated. So we have also developed some quite significant typological coding for a resource, which I'll be presenting on later today in the second half of today's event. So looking ahead to the next phase of our research, we recognise the learning context that we've explored so far represents only a part of the really complex picture for learning accessibility. In particular, the predominant role of self-directed and also informal learning. And so our current research has really highlighted the varied journeys that learners take into and also through the field, And so the need to explore those sort of longitudinal accounts of accessibility learning at different stages of academic and professional development. Importantly, we really look to develop the use of dialogic and participatory research methods that I mentioned previously with our expert panels. So that idea of really getting participants together around the data. So we are looking at running online diary circles, which will foster a community of practice. And this will be undergrads, postgrads, and early career professionals. And sort of engaging in inclusive writing practices. So this will be both social and reflexive. So participants will share diary entries to prompt discussion and feedback, etc. And these will be supported by workshops and focus groups. We also wish to explore key sites of learning, as I say, that were highlighted in our current phase, but were beyond the scope of our data collection. So we were certainly looking at doing further case studies that will focus on a range of sort of peer learning networks. And, you know, I'm sure some of these are perhaps familiar with some of our attendees today, things like the Slack channel and Stack Overflow and things like that. And alongside those traditional case study methods that I mentioned earlier, sort of observations, interviews, etc., we will certainly look to conduct discourse and content analysis of all of that sort of network content that we'll be accessing. And also explore the potential for dialogic sort of over-shoulder methods, so people talking about how they're interacting as they go along. And as a final note, just to end here, I think it is worth adding that in exploring these self-directed and peer learning aspects, we are really validating these as legitimate sites of learning, but we're also recognizing that these can be harnessed by educators to support and complement those sort of more formal teaching and training programs. So our references are there. We will be sharing the slides with everyone after the event. So with that, I'll hand back to Kellie.
Thanks, Andy. That was great. And thanks especially for jumping in there spontaneously. Really appreciate it. I believe things are all fine now with Swaroop. So thank you, Swaroop, for your patience there. Yes. Oh, there we go. We can see your slides. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a warm, sunny afternoon here in Goa, India. I'm Swaroop. I'm a computer science faculty at BITS Pilani, KK Birla Goa campus. And the lab I and my colleague work with, it's called the TREE Lab, Technology Research and Innovation in Education. And I'm going to talk about one of our approaches to teaching accessibility, which is a game-based learning approach. A little bit of background. So we have growing literature on teaching accessibility, mainly in the West, Europe, UK, etc. But very little work in the global South. And since I am in India and there are some other demographic factors, so we were interested particularly in exploring this region as well. So India has about 2 million undergrad students in competing courses with all sorts of different designations, not necessarily engineering courses. And there are over 5 million software professionals in India or Indian software professionals elsewhere. So that's a huge number. And one of the questions was, how do we reach these scales? How do we make accessibility an important part of their training? So the lot of software that they are developing, not necessarily just for the Indian public, but globally, how do we see the impact of teaching accessibility or their accessibility training there in the real world software? So scaling was one of the factors in our mind. In addition to that, we also replicated a 2018 study of US computer science faculty by Shinohara et al. And we found similar observations, similar results as theirs. Plus, we had added some more questions about recommendations for the India context. So together, what we found is very few CS faculty teach accessibility, about 10% in our case. And the top barriers they mention are that CS faculty don't consider accessibility as a core part of the computing curriculum, and they themselves lack accessibility knowledge. So if particularly the second one, if that is the barrier, then again, reaching to students is at scale is going to be difficult. Then we did another study with software professionals. The previous one was published at ACM ISER last year, and this one was published at the ICSE, International Conference on Software Engineering's education track. So here we surveyed 269 software professionals in India, and although about 40% of them had used inclusive design accessibility in some projects, but only 4% just had undergone some accessibility training. Like they considered themselves as accessibility experts. So again, there was a wide gap we saw here. Some of our questions asked what sort of accessibility efforts they took in development testing, etc. And we found that about 1/3 of them did not perform any accessibility testing. And the top barrier here was lack of skilled developers. Again, as we all understand that since there is lack of training, there is lack of skilled developers. So through another question, we learned that self-learned material was the top resource required. And we combined these two inputs to proceed with the game-based learning approach. So advantages of game-based learning: one, it's an active learning methodology. It enhances engagement and motivation for the participants. It has also shown enhancement in retention of the subject knowledge. It makes it adaptable. Students can learn at their own pace. They can go back to a certain level in the game, etc., etc. But there are some limitations. The main one being good game development is very resource intensive. So we are following the design-based research approach, which follows a design, test, evaluate, and reflect cycle. My PhD student Partha is primarily working on this, and we are currently at the first phase of our DBR cycle. So we have developed a game called Access Quest, which is a 2D game to teach accessibility skills. As we were launching that, designing that, we realized perhaps for the Indian demography, but maybe true elsewhere as well, accessibility sensitization is a prerequisite. A lot of the students have not gone through even the basics of accessibility. So we developed another game, we call it Ali Mythbuster, Accessibility Mythbuster, which is for sensitization and covering basic concepts. This game is fairly simple. It's developed using HTML and the web technologies. It shows bubbles like these on the user screen, and some of them are facts about accessibility, and some of them are myths. For example, the third from the left bubble here, it's probably not visible, but it says accessibility is optional, which is a myth. So if the user clicks and pops that bubble, then they get a point. So the score here goes from 9 to 10, as you can see here. And it also shows a pop-up box, which explains about the bubble they burst. So this is a fairly simple game, which has shown, as expected, enhanced engagement, etc. And main features of this are there is a simple scorecard. They race against the time. So timer is going down 1 minute down to 0. And we give feedback on each bubble popped. Even if it is correct, to reinforce learning. After the gameplay, the players can download the myths and facts they have encountered. So this was a prerequisite, a precursor to the Access Quest game, which is developed using the Unity framework. There is a storyline. A software developer goes through some daily life tasks like going to the grocery store, etc. And he or she encounters some challenges there, which teach them 5 WCAG level A guidelines. So here are some screenshots from that. These are the characters in the classic games. And here the character is going to the supermarket. And in the right bottom corner, the guideline 3.2.2 of WCAG is shown, where it says changing the setting of user interface component should not automatically cause a change in the content, etc. So yeah, the game has features like scaffolding, lock and key mechanism, hints, and timer. So in the first cycle of design-based research, we have collected the data, we are analyzing it and are in the process of writing it up. So what we have found so far, well, the methodology was this. We have a pre-play survey to establish the baseline of the participants, then the gameplay, then a post-play survey, and finally a focus group discussion to get the input on both the game itself and the learning that is happening through that. So in our study, we have 66 undergraduate CA students with little prior accessibility experience as established by the pre-play survey. Our findings are, we found positive effect on accessibility learning. That's perhaps not very surprising since they had very little experience beforehand. But we found positive change in attitude. For example, some participants said now after having gone through this exercise, they would want to go back, revisit their existing projects and implement accessibility in them. And we also found high degree of game enjoyment in this study. Some limitations or things to consider. So we got the feedback that the gameplay is very linear. The character just goes from one task to another. So perhaps a more non-linear, more overcoming some challenges kind of a gameplay will be more engaging. The rewards are very simple in terms of some points. So maybe more complex, more involved reward system needs to be developed. And on learning side, there are questions on transferability. They could do this in the game with the game, but how does it translate to their real world project? We have not studied it in this particular study. Okay. So yeah, currently we are analyzing results and incorporating the feedback for the next cycle. Okay, that's all I have. Sorry, that's all I have for now. I'll stop here at my 10 minutes. And here is my website and email if you want to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Swaroop. That was great. Thank you. And again, if people have questions that come to mind while Swaroop was talking, as with Andy, pop them in the Q&A, and we'll revisit those for the Q&A session after our final panelist presentation. So our third panelist is Professor Weiqin Chen from the University of Oslo in Norway, who is a professor in human-computer interaction and universal design of information and communication technologies. So again, if you want to know more about any of the panelists and find their email address, it's all in the programme, along with nice little photos of everybody as well. So you can have a look there, but we want to maximise our time now. So Weiqin, are you ready to go? I can see you.
Yes.
Oh, sharing your screen, fantastic. I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for inviting me to join this panel. Today, I'm going to talk a couple of the projects in the Norwegian context, particularly in building digital accessibility competencies for faculties and administrative staff. So I would like to give to talk a bit about Norwegian context. In Norway, we have a regulation on universal design of ICT. As you see that the terminology used in Norway is universal design of ICT or universal design. So in this regulation, that education sector is covered. It says that all the student-facing learning platforms and learning materials should be universally designed. And the Norwegian strategy on transition to digitalization in higher education sector 2021-25, universal design was considered one of the prerequisites for digitalization. And there is a section on universal design and adaptive education in this strategy. In addition, in Norway, there is an organization called the National Coordinator of Accessibility of Higher Education, and it's called Universal. The role of this organization is it's a driving force, advisor, and cooperating partners, and they also develop and share knowledge and building networks among higher education organizations. This is a part of the Norwegian Directorate for Higher Education and Skills. So as you see that in Norway, the requirement is on learning platforms and learning material. And there's a monitor authority that has regularly audit the universities. And 2 years ago, it audited one university's website and another university's digital exam systems. So if they are not, none of them have fulfilled the requirement, and then they have to fix it. Otherwise, they will get fined. So research, this requires that we are able to make accessible digital material. Research has shown or established that faculty and staff lack of awareness and knowledge, and their lack of knowledge about awareness of related laws and regulations and needs of diverse students, and also knowledge to make accessible content and accommodations. And one of the, I think Kristin Shinohara's work has been mentioned several times here. And when she asked the computer science faculty why they do not teach digital accessibility, and they said they don't, half part of the people said they do not know enough to teach it. So, and then in our study, and we also found out, and they reported there's no time to learn these new things because they are focusing on the subject matters. And also, they said they're difficult to find necessary learning material. We know there's a lot online, but how do you find the right one for you, for yourself? For example, it says, one of them said, "Oh, I have a video. I need to make it accessible. So how? Where do I find the resources that can help me to do that?" So the lack of knowledge and awareness and the skills among faculties also prevent the digital accessibility being taught in different disciplines. So myself, I often go around, give guest lectures in my colleagues' courses, and this is not a sustainable solution, but yeah, so that's how life is. So in 2020 and 2021, my former PhD student and myself conducted a systematic literature review. Andy has kindly described the process of such a literature review process, so I only need to talk about the results. So we find 16 research publications increasing faculty's digital accessibility, and we look at each of them. We extract data on objective, methodology used in the training, sample size, faculty involved, area and topics covered, evaluation methodology, and outcome. So the recommendations we have gathered is, among others, flexibility of training programs, customization of the content, and also objective measures for outcome. So there are more details in the paper you can find online. So based on our own previous research and this literature review, we have the research I present here is about how faculty can continue learning and find resources in their daily digital productions. This is kind of self-learning resource that mentioned by Swaroop. Sorry. So we have kind of filtered out the resources for faculty and administrative staff, so that they can click on what they are working on. So then they will present the resource for them just as they want it. So this research, first we have done a desktop research on the type of digital content and the accessibility in higher education, like what kind of content they are and what accessibility challenges. So we have made a list of elements in the digital content. And then we used the human-centered design approach in 3 iterations involving colleagues and both faculties and administrative staff. And usability testing was conducted, and in the end, we have done a document inspection. So the inspection was that we asked the participants to deliver a Word document, a PDF document from the Word, and a PowerPoint presentation from their own production. And then we check how many errors they have, how many accessibility issues they have, and then afterward we collect their updated version after they have learned. And then we identify how many issues they still have. So this is the process. So somehow there are some improvement, but not. So we're not very satisfied with the result actually. This is time is running out. So I conclude that. In this study that I presented, the participants were motivated to learn and make their digital content accessible. And they themselves are also aware that the lack of the necessary knowledge and skills. They wish to have someone they can ask when facing challenges. Due to the lack of time, they just say, okay, tell me what to do when I need it. And rather than go to find out by themselves. And then they wanted to know what tools are good for a specific addressing specific technology issues and how to use them. And so they thought this online guide very timely and important for their work. That can help them with the task at hand, and this can generally improve somewhat their accessibility of their digital content. But we need more materials and better organization in the guide. So currently it's rather limited in teaching materials. So they also wanted to have a just-in-time guide if the system know what they're working on, so it will be better it will better serve them and help them. So in the end, I would like to mention that for many years, we have tried to use this bottom-up approach. And in Norway, you can apply for money to do this kind of work. So I have got external funding to support my colleagues to do digital accessibility. But this is not scalable, and it's also difficult to sustain. So, I mean, many of us here, sitting here and know that we need a strategy at a higher level and to have a more sustainable approach. So I would very much like to see such kind of implementation in higher education organizations in a larger scale. Yeah. Thank you very much. I look forward to discussing with you in the panel.
Thank you very much, Chen, and to Swaroop and Andy as well for some great presentations. Lots of ideas buzzing around there. Please do use the Q&A as well if you've got questions. One question I would like to begin with for the panel is following on from Weiqin, what you were sharing there about, assessing the impact. And I noticed there you were kind of like, oh, you kind of hoped it would have been better. Although I did notice, I think text and images, there was an impact there. But I think to the panel generally on that topic, again, thinking about the research side of it, how do we, as researchers, assess the extent to which people have really learned something and are applying it? Are there more effective ways to do it than others? Andy, would you mind if I came to you first for some ideas on how we might measure or investigate the extent to which people have learned and are applying accessibility principles?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Yeah, formal assessment is always a tricky thing to evaluate the effectiveness of that. But one thing that does come to mind from our research, and this isn't something that is used widespread, but certainly some of them that were able to integrate it in their courses and their curriculum was this aspect of project work, and particularly capstone projects, which tend to be at the end of courses, the end of curricula. And I think they're a really good way of bringing a lot of aspects of the learning through a course together, and to really sort of give evidence of learning. So yeah, that's certainly something. But as I say, this isn't used extensively. Where accessibility is quite well embedded in courses and curricula, we do tend to see capstone projects. And these might not necessarily be around accessibility itself. They may be more general sort of project work, but if they integrate sort of accessibility aspects, then it can bring in working potentially with user groups, and so that sort of engaging with user groups and stuff like that. And certainly, within sort of quite heavily designed sort of aspects, the process of working with users and developing that over real world sort of type projects, I think can be a really good way of bringing together a lot of different aspects of what students may have learned through the course of their studies, and so can really be quite powerful in providing that evidence of learning, if you like. So it's a bit different from sort of testing and from sort of exams and that type of sort of formal assessment, but I think it's a really effective way of doing these different aspects, bringing these different aspects together.
Yeah, and I think just from in terms of being able to evidence applying those skills when students do move into the workforce as well. I don't know if people were familiar. I wasn't familiar with the term capstone project, but maybe people more in academia are. If anybody wants to look it up, it is exactly what Andy was just talking about there. It's where students basically problem solve real world issues. So it's a really interesting point there.
I mean, some of them can be, working with real clients, or they can be modelled on that sort of, real life sort of experiences, real life sort of problems and stuff. So it's, it can, it brings in those aspects of our sort of authentic sort of learning as well. And so yeah,
yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. We have a question from Bjorn, and actually I think this relates to your concluding slide, Weiqin. But again, we can open this up to the whole panel, because I think this is this popped into my mind as well. Bjorn's asking, what could this just-in-time guidance that you referred to, what could it be for lecturers in higher education? So, for instance, Microsoft continually improves their integrated accessibility test in Office. Is that the kind of thing you have in mind, or is it other things? I would love to. I'll just open that up to the panel to see what kind of just-in-time guidance would we like to see, or do we think would be useful? I don't know, Weiqin, do you want to expand on that more first, as you?
Yeah, this is one of the feedback that we got from the participants, and then given that AI is becoming widely used, and so we the suggestion is why don't we use AI technology to understand what you're doing, and then give you if you are not doing the right thing, and then information giving you and say you should do this and how you can do that. So that type of just in time. So the main idea is to save time and use minimum time to make the production, the digital material accessible, right? So Microsoft has done quite a good job in checking accessibility and then give you advice on what to do. But a lot of people I've seen, they don't do it. There is a button that is there and to check. And then once you get the issues, and then they also have suggestions on how you fix it. But people don't do it. You just, I don't know how that can be solved.
Something we've only got a couple more minutes, but something I would like to bring up that was popped in the Q&A earlier was from Mike, which I thought was a really interesting suggestion. I think going back to that thing of sometimes people need a nudge, they need a reason to do things, and Mike was suggesting that if all academic journals required submissions to be in an accessible format, then that would surely have a massive impact and require students and academics to know more about this. So I thought that was a really good idea. And also I know in some places, I think, I believe on the Masters in Assistive Technology and Education at Dundee University, and this might be the case elsewhere, is they require their coursework to be accessible when it's submitted. So I want to thank our fabulous panelists, Weiqin, Andy and Swaroop, for an absolutely packed session there. And thank you so much.